I originally had wanted to make a video on rejecting humanity and the symbolism that comes with, but now looking back at it, it's such a small part to a large idea in general. The process of becoming a monster is a lot larger than the one person that it affects. There's this long road to get to where they ended up, usually brimming with internal conflicts or circumstances that are legitimately out of their hands. The world is filled with these monster-like people, and they'll be the reason why people regress into becoming one of them, and that's a large thing to consider. Think about how many Victor Frankensteins there are in this world that go around creating their monsters. Many series have their way of showing this, but this time I'm going to be using JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and One Punch Man. With JoJo, we find our prime example of a monster in Dio. While he was the one to become a monster by his own will, the world that he had lived in had made him into a monster before he had become a literal one. Life before the Joestar household had turned Dio into this intelligent, self-sustaining narcissist as a defense mechanism to the world that he had lived in. If you aren't looking out for yourself over anyone else, no one would be out there looking out for you. At least that's where he was. The powerful always hold their power over the weak. Dio internalizes that in everything he's learned in that world, and it's reflected in his character. He had become a personification of his placement in the world, so as soon as he was placed into a better place, the Joestar household, he had adjusted and had done what the world had done to him, but instead onto others. But doing so had ended up creating this escalating fight between good and evil to where nothing good was really going to come from it. Dio making Jonathan Joestar into a child of circumstance and being the reason for his growth and adaptation to the evils of the world, because by Dio being a personification of his evils, Jonathan had basically gone against the worst that the world had to offer. He became a foil to everything Jonathan was. He pushed this man to the point where Jonathan was able to roam the streets of Dio's world to come out even stronger for it. Dio couldn't fathom the power of resolve in Jonathan's character. He had seen Jonathan's results, and the only thing left to do was to grow further than that as a means of adaptation. Which wasn't exactly Dio's original plan, because that was just to use the mask to kill him, but you know, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Growing past Jonathan isn't something that would represent in Dio's character. As a form of an adapting and elevating evil, progress is really a meaningless journey, and he wants to get to the results because the results are the only thing that matter in this case. He saw the journey and skipped right past it to become the monster that he's always been. Now, what his vampirism in specific represents has already been done in a previous video, so I'll be referring to that if you want more on what his vampirism means in general, but basically here, vampirism, or just becoming a monster in general, represents the absolute worst of humanity, or how people take those inhumane journeys to match others' results. And with impactful pillars of the franchise like Dio existing, there's bound to be people that want to follow in his footsteps for a few reasons. Straightso was someone who had done that. He had saw Dio in the end, but more so held interest in the benefits of vampirism than Dio's character more than anything, seeing Dio's power, lively energy, and charisma, which existed before he became a vampire, and those were enough to make Straightso follow in Dio's footsteps. Some people take the journey like Dio does, so they just lust for the power and then they attain it, but Straightso's case was that he more so wanted that youthful energy he had originally. That alone was probably his drive because his youth was his power to him. When it comes to the world of One Punch Man, it's scarily similar to our own in a way. There's more to be done for those that become monsters than to prevent the conditions that normally produce them. The monsters are dealt with as they are rather than what they had been before they had turned into that, because there's nothing really you can do once you become a monster. That becomes who you are, and usually the people that do become monsters don't even consider going back anyway since they embrace who they become. Monsterization is an interesting problem that happens in One Punch Man that is basically a reflection of some of the many reasons why crimes are committed in general, be it circumstance or internal conflict. Internal conflict being a large reason why people even turn into monsters, because there are so many people that turn as a means to unnaturally enhance their strength. For example, there's everyone that Goketsu had, in quotes, turned into monsters, and I use those quotes strongly. Chose had a belief that his genes made himself superior in comparison to others. Even after being whooped, he believed that there was just more to himself that he needed to be pushed out, per se. Benpatsu is someone who lacks the position he thinks he's in. He's basically that uncle that swears that he can ball up against Kawhi because, oh man, he played in high school and he was pretty good back in the day. Or he's that one friend that swears he can beat a top player because that one top player loses to other top players and that means he might have a shot. He already thinks the way that he does. He just internally lusts for that position so he could finally act on how he thinks. That position will also give him the confidence he wants to have when it comes to coming in contact with those significantly stronger than him. He wants to be that arrogant man with power to back up his arrogancy. Hamukich, he's actually just an unfortunate case because of how deep his descent goes. Because he had basically traded his humanity twice for similar reasons. These were all people on the edge of becoming a monster. They were just waiting for a push that would turn them. Why? Because being strong is a major thing in this universe, and most of the desires that people have would be a lot more attainable the more strength that they have. Except when you're an anomaly and your strength is the reason why your desires are unattainable. Now, a lot of the people in the One Punch Man universe turn into a monster as a means of becoming stronger because they usually plateau in their strength, be it because they don't know how to push their strength to its fullest potential, or they've reached that potential and haven't broken their limiter, and it makes a lot of sense that a lot of these people don't know what to do or what they want to do because the hero world, fighting world, and the entire world itself is pretty selfish. Those that become extremely strong usually keep their information and all and remain at the top. So then those below them that want to become that and are having internal conflicts with themselves will most likely turn into a monster so they get the results that they've been feeding for. And if that's not the case, you have a bunch of people that want to be strong without actually working towards it. Either way, monsterization becomes the easy answer. Now, monsters themselves symbolize countless amount of things when it comes to how many there are and who's writing them, and a turn is a similar case with how many people have represented different styles of writing to them. In our case as mentioned, to turn is a representation of what it's like to take the more inhumane road to a process, and to become the worst version of yourself in terms of character. I'm sure you can think of something that you would want to be good at, which takes an extensive amount of time if you go about it the way that you should, or something that you want in general, be it physical or intangible, that'll take a ridiculous amount of time to get. Sometimes there are good shortcuts which cut down on things being unreasonably tedious, like guides instead of outright trying to figure out things on your own, but sometimes there are these darker shortcuts, and they're not plausible if you consider your health or the morals involved. These monsters have taken a road with no return, unable to reconcile with humanity. When it comes to JoJo, people turning is more so a monsterization of their character like I had mentioned previously, which is honestly what happens in One Punch Man 2 because the end result in both is the monster looking back at you in the mirror, a reflection of their spiraling descent. And no matter what we know about the character and what circumstances have turned the character into the way that they are, the world will only know about the monster that was. Thank you all for watching. If you noticed that this video was any different in terms of like editing wise, that's because that was made here by my good friend Mugen. Mugen, you can introduce yourself by doing like a smash type clip or something like that, like that. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. You see that? Ooh, look at that. Look at that. Ooh, but she might be fucking with me right now. I might not. I don't know what's going on the screen exactly right now, but I'm just saying it, and hopefully it's something that I can. I don't know. It's there, but yeah. Hopefully y'all like this type of thing. This is kind of like an obscure-ish type content type deal. Like, you don't really see me putting two of these things together. I mean, I've put like Death Note and JoJo together before, but basically I like doing these general videos. And if you like these general videos where I can just go about certain things all together, like a theme or just all around trope or something around that area, that'd be really cool, and I would love to do that. You guys just have to give me the go and the thumbs up for it and show the support for that and all that. I think the last time I did something similar to this was the video on the perfect life forms, and I really did love making that one, honestly. Just didn't probably perform that the way that I would hope so, but, you know, it's just about, like, making stuff that you like, so that's really how you go about it in this world. So, leave any feedback on if you guys like this type of stuff. If you guys like One Punch Man and you want to see me cover more of it, I'll be totally down for that, because I honestly like other stuff besides JoJo, and I'd be loving to cover that too. I said I would cover Hunter more in the future. I'm slacking. I'm definitely working towards that. But yeah, just give me the feedback for it, and I'll definitely look into it and see if I can get more of that going. Mugen's stuff is going to be in the description. You can follow her there. She has a bunch of cool shit. She makes fire stuff in general. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace out and Godspeed.